Homage to the fundamental teacher Buddha Shakyamuni. Homage to the wisdom warrior Manjushri. Homage to all the benevolent lineage masters. The supreme Dharma, infinitely profound and subtle, is rarely encountered, even in millions of eons. Now we are able to hear, study, and follow it. May we fully realize the Tathagata's true meaning. In order to liberate all sentient beings from samsara, may we all generate the supreme bodhicitta. Now, let's continue our study on the Dzogchen preliminary practices. We have previously discussed comparing the number of humans to other beings, and concluded that human life is precious and rare. Let's further explain this principle. This human life with freedoms and advantages is not obtained by chance or luck, but is the result of accumulating two types of merit over many lifetimes. As the great scholar Drakpa Gyaltsen said, obtaining a human life with freedoms and advantages is not achieved through power, but through accumulating merit. The precious human life with freedoms and advantages described earlier doesn't come about randomly or by chance. It's not like rain falling from the sky, nor grass growing on the ground. It's not a random coincidence, nor lucky occurrence. So what are the causes and conditions for obtaining a human life? As stated in A Guide to the Words of My Perfect Teacher, indeed, to obtain a human life through a very long period of time, we need to uphold pure precepts, cultivate generosity as well as other virtues, and also make supreme aspirations. Only after aggregate many excellent conditions can we obtain a human life in this lifetime to practice the Dharma under the guidance of spiritual friends. This rare and precious human life is not easy to obtain. The sutras speak of 4 rarities. Human life is rare, but we have obtained. Dharma is rare, but we have encountered. It's also rare to generate faith in the Dharma, yet we have generated. And it's rare to generate bodhicitta, but we have also generated. So we have all the 4 rare conditions fulfilled. Many of us here indeed have accumulated wisdom and merit through many past lives, which in turn have such excellent conditions in this life. Some may earn a lot of money and think, I have such great fortune, and I would be so happy about making so much money all of a sudden. They feel very confident in themselves, but in fact, no matter how much money they earn, wealth can only solve temporary problems. The value of obtaining a human life far surpasses material wealth. So each of you here should repeatedly contemplate this teaching in your heart. This is our preliminary practice on the rarity of human life. How to practice? Well, you don't necessarily need to close your eyes or try to visualize something like Bindu appearing before you. It's not necessary. Rather, you must repeatedly contemplate this principle. Observe and reflect again and again until naturally in your heart. Not pretending or forcing it with deliberate efforts, you spontaneously realize that a human life is not easy to obtain. Especially a human life capable of studying the Dharma is not easy to obtain. And since I have obtained it today, how fortunate I am, how rare and precious it is. When such thoughts naturally arise in your heart, it shows you have some understanding of the rarity of human life. I think this point is not difficult to understand. Some fellow practitioners might think, I meditated for a long time this morning. I don't know if it's because of my negative karma. I really couldn't visualize anything. It was very irritating, so I went back to sleep. But there's no need to be disheartened, because you can repeatedly contemplate this principle. I think despite your capacity or discursive thoughts, you can still contemplate upon these principles that are aligned with the truth. So if you read and reflect on them over and over again, there's nothing you can't understand or generate in your mind. That's why the great Sakya master Trakpa Gyaltsen once said, obtaining a human body, that is practicing the Dharma, that is free from the 8 unfavorable conditions and possessing the 10 advantages, it is not because we ourselves are powerful or capable, or because we have status, wealth, or fame in this life. It is not obtained through these means. Some leaders in the world today get their positions through money, connections, or other means, but it's not like that for us to be reborn as human beings. The result is solely due to the accumulation of merit and doing good deeds over many past lives. So don't think that becoming a monastic in this life is just a coincidence. Because of family circumstances or a sudden feeling of renunciation, it may seem like a coincidence, but in reality, it involves extraordinary intricate causes and conditions. These conditions are closely related to your own mind continuum. For those who believe in cause and effect, things happen in this life are of the result of causes and conditions. Some people say everything is predestined, or everything is fate and can't be changed. When we explain these aspects using Buddhist texts like Abhidharmakosha and principles of Buddhist logic, you have to acknowledge the relationship between cause and effect. If you understand the detailed and profound causal relationships, then you'll see that all our actions now have causes and effects. Once you understand this teaching, we must consider the ultimate question of birth and death in the long cycle of samsara. All wise ones would be concerned about this. So we should understand the value of obtaining a human body now and not to squander it. Even if one has obtained a human life, if it is not illuminated by the genuine Dharma, but is used for committing all kinds of evil deeds, then this kind of human bodies are even more inferior than the beings in the lower realms. Some people have indeed obtained a human body, but for various reasons, they haven't encountered the illuminating light of the true Dharma, the wish-fulfilling jewel of the Buddha's teachings. That is why they would engage in killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, and the 10 non-virtuous actions, committing all kinds of evil deeds in the world. Sometimes when we look at such a person, their human life is truly inferior to that of animals, even worse. Why is that? Because if you were to be reborn as an animal, though animals are generally quite dull in capacity, their ability in harmful actions is also limited. But humans can be very clever in certain ways. They can create various instruments of killing that can destroy humanity and all life on Earth, such as nuclear weapons, atomic bombs, and so on. So sometimes human beings can lead a truly terrifying life. Although some people may not harm lives on such a large scale, they develop very bad habits in their own sphere. For example, since childhood, they get used to eating chicken every day, killing fish every day, killing many lives to sustain their own body. Many animals in the lower realms probably don't commit such evil deeds. Like yaks in the mountains, they just eat grass. And goats also eat grass and drink water. Their lives are relatively pure and simple. Because yaks and goats are vegetarian, they don't eat meat. So compared to them, some people's lives are truly terrifying. They have many abilities when it comes to creating negative karma, but they have no ability at all to create positive karma. They don't believe in the 3 jewels either. They won't even make 1 prostration, offer 1 butter lamp, or burn 1 stick of incense. Such small acts that create merit and positive karma, some people don't do even once in their entire life. There are many such people around us. We don't need to imagine these people. You can see them. Sometimes I think many lay practitioners and some monastics don't necessarily need to meditate on the rarity of human life in your room. Go outside, what you see and hear, the colleagues around you. Observe from their actions. You can see it clearly, whether some people's lives have any value or not. So, just as Jetsun Milarepa said to the hunter Gompo Dorje, though the Buddha originally said that a human life with freedoms and advantages is precious and rare, when I see human beings like you, it doesn't seem precious or rare at all. You may have read Milarepa's biography. Jetsun Milarepa was at a place called Nishangurta on the border between Tibet and Nepal. Once, he suddenly heard gunshots and dogs barking wildly outside. After a while, a deer came. Seemed to be a black deer. Frightened, trembling with fear and panic, it came to Milarepa's cave for refuge. Seeing its condition, the Jetsun generated strong compassion. He sang a song to it. After a while, the deer's mind calmed down a bit. Soon after, the red hunting dog that was chasing the deer also came fiercely, in a state of great anger, when it came before Milarepa. At this time, Jetsun also generated great compassion for the dog. He sang a song to it too. After singing, its anger and the doe's fear both disappeared. The doe seemed to rest on Milarepa's left side, the dog on his right. After a while, a hunter also came, looking very angry and terrifying. Carrying a gun, along with bows and arrows, he came before the Jetsun. When the hunter saw the doe and dog on the two sides of the yogi, he felt it was very unfathomable. He thought this yogi might be using magic to control the animals. He immediately shot out an arrow at the yogi, but missed. He found this very strange. At this time, Jetsun Milarepa sang another song to him. The song contained these words. The Buddha said, "Human life is very precious, but for someone like you, human life is not precious." We can see that some hunters, fishermen, and butchers are truly very, very pitiful. They spend their whole lives creating negative karma. After he finished singing, the hunter felt this yogi was quite extraordinary, but he wondered how exactly the yogi survived. He looked into his cave. Inside there were only some wild grass roots and nettles. Besides that, there was no food or utensils of any kind. Finally, he developed great faith. He immediately offered all his bows, arrows, and prayed to the Jetsun. He begged the Jetsun to accept him as a disciple to serve him. The Jetsun also sang some songs to him and taught him the Dharma. But the hunter had a request. He wanted to go home to take care of some chores, perhaps to file for divorce, and then he would return. At that time, the Jetsun didn't agree. He asked the hunter to stay there and continue practicing. Later in history, we see that the hunter Gompo Dorje became a truly extraordinary Siddha, a great accomplished master, and the dog and doe were also freed from the sufferings of samsara in the end. There are many more fascinating stories in the life of Milarepa. We have many fellow Dharma friends here. If you haven't read it before, I encourage you to read it yourselves. Because in the history of Tibetan Buddhism, Milarepa is truly an extraordinary practitioner. His songs of realization and teachings through his Vajra speech are fused with profound insights for later generations, including myself, especially when reading the life of Milarepa. I remember when I was in junior high school, it must be more than 20 years ago now. At that time, I was once sick. There was a lama in our village, and I listened to him reading the life of Milarepa to us every night. We probably spent about 10 days or so listening to the whole book. Unlike now, my memory was quite good then. After listening, I could retell many stories. Later, when I was in high school, there was a classmate named Sonam Tserang. Once we were by the bank of Zongta River, where flowers were blooming everywhere in summer. We first washed our feet by the river, then sat on the grass for a while. Then I started to tell him stories from the life of Milarepa and other tales. As I spoke, Gradually, tears began to flow down his cheeks. I continued telling stories over that entire afternoon. When I met him again last year, he still remembered some stories. Although his grades weren't very good and he didn't get into college later, he still remembered some Milarepa stories. When he met me, he said, "When we were in high school, you actually taught me some Dharma. The impression in my heart is still very vivid. It is at that time I generated great faith in the Dharma." Actually, a small story can sometimes make a big change in a person's life, including when we were compiling Waves of Wisdom Ocean before. There were some college students, after reading Milarepa's biography and collection of Doha songs, began to have a new perspective of life and chose the path of monastic life. This phenomenon is quite common, so I would encourage our Dharma friends here, now that we have the time and opportunity, we need to meditate on the rarity of human life. Indeed, only few people understand the preciousness of human life. Looking at the world, many people are not truly being a human. They only appear to be a human. If we tell them they're not like humans, they'll certainly be unhappy. But in reality, they don't have a truly precious human life. Why is that? On this earth now, there is a growing population of humans. Back in around 1950, the global population was 2.5 billion. Then, after several decades, in nearly 50 years, the number has grown exponentially. Now there are over 6 billion people. According to some statistics, in a few decades, soon, the human population will quickly reach over 10 billion. When it reaches over 10 billion, the Earth won't have the capacity to sustain us. We would then face resource issues, social issues, human issues, as well as economic issues, political issues, and so on. The reality is, many conflicted aspects of life will occur. After this, the entire human living environment will become extremely cramped. What is the reason for this? It's not because they are practicing virtuous deeds, or that there are more people doing good and bringing virtuous radiance to the whole world. It's not like that. Beings are creating more and more negative karma now, though they appear to be human. In reality, those who truly practice virtuous deeds or believe in cause and effect can be said to be as rare as morning stars, which is barely any. For these reasons, some scholars predicted the human race in future will face various problems with tremendous difficulties. Of course, as Buddhists, we must deeply reflect on these issues. Why are beings prone to create negative karma nowadays? And their methods for creating negative karma, compared to the ancient times, are much more advanced. On top of all that, the entire human ethical and moral system, as well as aspects of mental health, along with the education and methods that support them, are in decline compared to the old times. So, on the surface, it may seem that science and technology are developing rapidly nowadays. Humans are constantly progressing and evolving. There are many beautiful words. But human ethics and morals are progressively deteriorating. In the end, the prospects for human habitation on Earth are becoming increasingly uncertain. So we should understand some principles about the rarity of human life. Don't be brainwashed by the popular worldly thinkings that present enjoyment is extremely important, that we must desperately enjoy ourselves, and so on. These kinds of claims are so deceptive and tempting. Before we have the eye of wisdom, the true wisdom, it's easy to believe others' statements. But we are not total pessimists either. It is not that we're unable to differentiate the truth from the false, black from white in the world. If there really is a valid point, we can discover it too. The wisdom of Buddhism surpasses other knowledge, because it is very sharp. The conclusions drawn from such wisdom are something people have to admit, that in terms of reason and truth. So we should also realize here that human life is indeed precious. Therefore, nothing is easier than human life to become a falling stone that weighs one down to lower realms. So we must understand that if humans create negative karma, such karma created in one human lifetime may be irredeemable for 10,000 kalpas. So the power of human life indeed surpasses other beings in lower realms. They can suffer in hell for many lifetimes, even kalpas. For example, if a leader kills many people or mobilizes an army, causing worldwide chaos, or destroys the Buddha's teachings and so on, if one creates such karma, the consequences are unimaginable. For example, in the history of Han Chinese regions, there was the 3 Wus and 1 Zong persecution of Buddhism. What these emperors had done was truly terrifying. Among the 3 Wus, the first was Emperor Tai Wu of Northern Wei. He was extremely cruel. At that time, all monastics were buried in pits or beheaded, completely eliminated the Sangha. At that time, basically, you couldn't see a single monastic in the world. It was horrendous. Later, during the reign of Emperor Wu of Northern Zhou, the destruction of Buddhism was also terrifying. According to some historical records, over 40,000 temples were destroyed and some were used as secular residences, and more than 3 million monks and nuns were forced to return to lay life, all of them. It became a peak of extinction, such a disaster. It was like this during the time of Emperor Wu of Northern Zhou. Later, during the time of Emperor Wuzong of Tang Dynasty, the damage to Buddhism was also unimaginable. According to some historical accounts, many of the larger and medium-sized monasteries, about 4,600, were destroyed. Over 40,000 smaller temples were all destroyed, and 260,000 monastics were forced to be disrobed and return to lay life, which was truly frightening. Later, during the later Zhou dynasty, it was also disastrous. Although at that time not all monastics were destroyed, the damage was still quite significant. What these emperors have done during these dynasties was similar to King Langdharma's destruction of Buddhism in Tibet, basically the same. Among the 20 emperors of the Tang dynasty, Emperor Wuzong of Tang was the only one who didn't believe in Buddhism. During his 6 years in power, all monks were ordered to return to lay life. He couldn't stand Buddhism and monks. So one person's enormous sin is very, very frightening. At that time, science wasn't so advanced. But if science had been advanced, he might have destroyed many monks around the world. Of course, from some historical analysis perspectives, it's said that the 3 Wus were related to Taoism and the 1 Zong was related to Confucianism. There are such theories. But some say because at that time there were many monastics, it posed some threat to the development of society. Some monastics didn't pay taxes or serve in the military. Later, the state also viewed Buddhism as a new culture from India, which conflicted with the native religions of China. Based on this dislike and then some monastics' lifestyles, especially some of them maybe wastefulness at that time, even some monastics began to farm, like landlords, buying large tracts of land. This later brought pressure to society. Afterwards, the ruling class had to take these measures. There are such claims. I've read this viewpoint before. During the Song dynasty, there was a Chan master named Zongzi who said this. Inborn the 3 Wus, a bane to my faith's light, disciples homeward, temples void of sight. The meaning is that the 3 Wus appeared all of a sudden to carry out historic destruction of our religion. In the end, when Buddha Shakyamuni's disciples wanted to go back to temples, all the monasteries and stupas had been destroyed. This describes the entire tragic situation at that time. But what is the reason for this? He went on to say, It must have been in the days of reverence years before that monastics could not maintain frugality and keep the right spirit. This means that Buddhists at that time were most revered and most respected by the people. At that time, they could not be frugal or maintain a pure way of practice. This reason led to what happened to Buddhism in the end. Some of the words spoken by such a Chan master may also compel us. As later followers, we have to reflect deeply. Why is that? Because now, some monastics and practitioners indeed live very simply, content with little, practicing true Dharma. We should acknowledge this. There are also some monastics and practitioners who only bring pressure to society. Lazy and gluttonous, they don't contribute to society or Buddhism, and their attitude towards money and society brought about such consequences. If your mind is very pure, truly reciting Buddha's name or practicing virtuous deeds, I think it brings great benefit to all humanity, countries, and society. Even if you haven't accomplished anything, simply making aspirations with a pure mind brings people intangible value, that is, happiness and well-being. I have no doubt about it. But if monastics or lay Buddhists were to be very greedy and not keep precepts or behave in accordance with Dharma, and if these kinds of situations became somewhat excessive and uncontrolled, it would indeed put pressure to society. So while understanding the rarity of human life, it's necessary for everyone to review some past history. We should compare current situations with some situations of Buddhism's destruction in the past in terms of reasons and conditions. So here, as I just explained, because of some actions of a person committing great negative deeds, they may not get out from the lower realms for many kalpas. So now that we have obtained such a human life, what we should do, we need to make some choices. Now, whether doing good or evil, the power is in our own hands. We humans now indeed have the power in our own hands. Some people say, I'm bound by family obligations, constrained by work commitments, and guided by the force of karma. Actually, coming to this world, we still have freedom to make choices, compared to some other beings. For example, animals, if you ask them to practice virtue, it's simply impossible. But for us humans, as long as your own strength of faith permits, and if you can boost your confidence, you'll find different ways to handle various social relationships and family dynamics, each tailored to your individual situation. This is what I think. The most crucial thing is that our mind is not strong enough. The real key to practicing virtue is in our own hands. There's an article called Holding the Key to Your Own Happiness. It states that one should be the master of one's emotions. One shouldn't expect or hope for others to bring happiness, but share the happiness and well-being we have with others. It mainly expounds this argument. I think what it says makes a lot of sense. Indeed, the key to future happiness should be held firmly in your own hands. You need to seek the direction for yourself. If you firmly believe in the law of cause and effect in samsara, you would never jump off a cliff into the abyss with open eyes. But because of external conditions, because of our own past karma, we often half-heartedly believe in the sufferings of lower realms in samsara. So in actions we generate, there are often some errors. So here in the verse it also says, as the verse goes, this body doing good is the boat to liberation. This body doing evil is the anchor to samsara. This body is the servant of all good and evil. This body of ours, if it practices virtue, for example, by making offerings, prostrations, and practicing like this, then this body that each of us has obtained is very precious. It is the great ship to liberation. Relying on it, we will surely leave the ocean of birth and death, leave the ocean of affliction and suffering, and reach the shore of liberation and nirvana. Everyone can rely on this body to attain the state of liberation. If we use this body to create various negative karmas such as killing, then by relying on this body we will never be free from the ocean of samsara. Since ancient times, anchors have been used. I've seen that kind of anchor before. In the biography of Guru Padmasambhava, when King Indrabhuti went to sea, they moved forward by the wind blowing their sails. During their journey, when they needed to stop at night or in the sea, the large ship had 4 very big anchors made in iron and lead on its 4 sides. If this anchor is pulled out and dropped into the sea, the ship will remain steady. No matter how long the time, it can stay steady relying on this anchor. Similarly, relying on our body, if you don't want liberation and start creating negative karma throughout your life, which only lasts for a few decades, you will not gain liberation from lower realms in samsara even as long as for tens of thousands of kalpas. Therefore, we must analyze about the pros and cons of having this body. This body is like a servant in a house. The servant can clean the whole house spotlessly. This is the servant's ability. If the house is left in a mess, this also shows a kind of ability of the servant. Similarly, each of us now, outwardly, we all have eyes and noses, seemingly exactly the same. But of course, one's own mind plays the main role. The body is also subjected to cause and condition. What we will become in the future really depends on each person's own body and how it carries out different actions. As the master of the body, the mind must guard the body with mindfulness and awareness. What is my body really doing? There should always be this supervisory alertness. Next, it said that due to the power of accumulating merit in the past, we have now obtained a human life with the 18 freedoms and advantages. If we don't seek for the essence of the supreme Dharma, but instead pursue this life's food, clothing, shelter, and travel, or the 8 worldly concerns, we will waste it meaninglessly. Then at the time of death, we can only clutch our chests in regret. How heartbreaking that would be. In this passage, everyone should understand, because of our own virtuous actions in the past, those who are present here have obtained such a precious human life. But the most crucial thing is that we must now cherish this body and use this body to seek the virtuous Dharma. Therefore, we should cherish this body solely for practicing all virtues, as it says in The Way of the Bodhisattva. We should cherish this opportunity. Cherish this body only to practice virtuous deeds. Besides practicing virtue, doing some frivolous neutral things, or even worse, creating negative karma, must be avoided. If you don't control yourself, it could become truly tragic. On the surface, our body is made of flesh and bones. On one hand, it should be treated like an enemy, but on the other hand, by relying on this body, we can indeed accumulate much merit. Although seeing the body as an enemy, we should protect it. So this body of ours plays a very important role. If one can live a long life with pure discipline, then this body can be a tool to accumulate great merit. If someone who upholds precepts lives long, they can create great merit. For those who practice virtue in this world, even living for one more day brings great merit indeed. I think it might be better if those who create negative karma leave earlier. If they create negative karma every day, if they don't even recite Avalokiteshvara's mantra once a day, it might be better for them to take rebirth sooner. Even by taking a rebirth as an animal might not create such terrible negative karma as humans do. So if we don't practice virtue well and spend all day eating, drinking, and having entertainment, people are terribly foolish. We see people around us spending all the days eating, drinking, and distracted by entertainment. Apart from craving for money, besides these trivial matters, there's no real substantial meaning to this kind of life. If we, the so-called practitioners, also become like this, it's truly sad. When death comes, if you have faith in Buddhism and know that there is life after death, but you haven't practiced much virtue throughout your whole life, if you have squandered your life, then at time of death, you'll surely regret it. How terrible that would be. Everyone should think about this. Of course, some individuals don't understand the principle of past and future lives. They might not suffer much because they die like a yak. When a yak dies, it only feels the pain of that moment. It has no thoughts about the future, no regrets, because it's too dull-witted. We can see how dull-witted they are. For example, if someone applies medicine to a yak, it feels no gratitude. On the contrary, if someone starts to cutting off its head, it might not feel any aggression. It just feels pain. People in the world now are indeed like this. They have no regret for their past karma and no vigilance about the terrors of future lives. Also, it seems humans are not as smart as we proclaim. Some scientists and writers may think they are very smart in worldly knowledge, but they don't even know if there is a next life or not. For these kinds of people to claim that they are very smart, but they're unwilling to consider anything that may happen after death, also don't know if there's existence after death. Is it really smart to disregard death completely? So I think we sometimes have to relate to this world. We need to reflect inwardly and also need to observe the outer world. As it says in The Way of the Bodhisattva, having gained this body of freedom and good opportunity, if I do not practice virtue, there is no greater self-deception, no greater foolishness. Now that we have obtained such a good human life, if we don't practice virtue, there's no greater self-deception. If others deceive me for money or other things, that's understandable, because they are not connected to me. So they might not be kind to me, but if one deceives oneself, since one trusts oneself the most, and if one deceives oneself, what remedy is there in this world for such foolishness? But there are many people now who are truly just deceiving themselves. The reason for this is, on one hand, their karma from past lives. On the other, education in the current environment, which is a very important factor. But humans have reached such a state of foolishness, one can't help but deeply reflect on the current situation. So to all of you, especially those who believe in Buddhism, I think you should be joyful. Longchenpa, in Finding Rest in the Nature of Mind, after discussing the rarity of human life, specifically talks about having joy and appreciation when reflecting on this human life. Do we have this feeling? Look around us. Among the thousands upon thousands of people, almost none know and believe that there are lives after death. Fortunately, I know that I need to have some preparation for the next life. Although I dare not say I practice very well regarding creating negative karma, I have a sense of fear. I don't dare to carelessly kill other living beings. If I were to kill, I would be very afraid. For example, when a yak is falling into a fire pit, people nearby might say, "Oh, this yak is so stupid. Look, the burning iron is touching its body. How painful it must be." We dare not even to look. It's shocking, very frightening. Similarly, when we see people around us creating such terrifying negative karma, although our own practice may be poor, fortunately, we have the understanding of this principle. Therefore, we should know that relying on this human life to overcome samsara and suffering is the most crucial. It's also said below, clearly this life is the crucial step in deciding eternal good or eternal evil. It points out that this life is very crucial. It is similar to that when a child is at a crucial stage in his life, such as studying in university and trying to pass the exams to get some good jobs. Or say, now is their most crucial time, because now is the time for them to study. This is the one and only opportunity. Human life is like this. Our eternal happiness or eternal suffering is determined by these few decades of lifetime. If we waste these decades, then there's no second chance. It's like if your youth has completely passed, is there still a chance to go to school? No. Similarly, we should deeply consider if in this life we don't attain the firm ground of Buddhahood, it will be very difficult to obtain such a human life with freedom again in the next life. Once we were to be reborn in the lower realms, there's no chance to get the light of the true Dharma at all. Moreover, being completely ignorant of what to accept and reject, the consequence can only be falling further and further deep into endless lower realms. So from now on, we must make every effort. In this aspect, we really must do that. I think I can't explain it any more clearly in words. It's very easy to understand. But regarding the content, I don't know if the fellow practitioners have often contemplated upon these. If after this life passes, we might be reborn in the lower realms, then to really climb up from the lower realms to really be reborn among humans or in the higher realms, there may not be such an opportunity. To gain an opportunity like this is not an easy thing. To obtain a human life from the lower realms is not an easy thing at all. So, in the process of contemplation now, we must apply the three excellences: excellent beginning with bodhicitta, excellent main content without concepts, and excellent conclusion with dedication of merit. When practicing contemplation on the rarity of human life, every practice is like what was said before. When adjusting motivation, generate bodhicitta for all limitless beings through the boundless space. Then, when contemplating, you don't necessarily have to practice with closed eyes. You can read the book repeatedly. Through reading the words repeatedly, again and again, familiarize yourself with the teaching. Finally, in your heart, conviction will naturally arise. Some people might feel that, oh, human life is really precious while I'm speaking now, but after the class is over, that feeling vanishes like lightning in darkness. Just like Khenpo Achung's analogy, when iron is burning in fire, it's red, but when taken out, it immediately becomes black. Just like some people, when they're contemplating, they would feel, oh, human life is indeed precious. They might even shed some tears. But afterwards, when they get into the outside world, they have no feeling at all. This is because we haven't familiarized with the teachings enough. If we familiarize with it for a long time, always thinking on it, then naturally, in your heart, you'll feel that human life is really precious. And you will feel that in the whole world, if you haven't practiced much virtue, then fame, status, or various attractive external conditions are simply futile, not reliable at all. Just like the great masters of the past often say, if a friend we trusted very much deceives you one day, you would feel very disappointed, disheartened, and would think, this person has deceived me. How much I used to trust them. In your heart, you have an averse feeling towards them. Similarly, in the whole world, we have no interest in anything except cherishing human life and practicing Dharma. It shows that in your heart you've generated a sense of renunciation. This is called the four thoughts that turns the mind to the Dharma. The first is the rarity and preciousness of human life. You see, when the preciousness of human life truly arises in your heart, it's as if you have no interest in anything worldly. There's a genuine, long-term renunciation, wondering when liberation can be attained. Apart from liberation, nothing else has intrinsic meaning. I remember it was quoted before in the words of my perfect teacher. Milarepa said in one of his songs, "In a rocky cave in a deserted valley, my mind always avert from samsara. My guru is the Buddha of the 3 times. My faith in him is firm and never wavers." I really like this verse. At that time, Milarepa was in a cave where no one else was around. In his heart, he had no interest in any worldly fame or status. Not just for a day or two, but at all times. He always kept the mind of renunciation, just like the analogy I gave earlier, that nothing is reliable. Nowadays, when a love relationship comes to an end, when there is a breakup, some people tend to have no interest in anything else, including food, clothes. They seem to lose all interests, and they feel that there's no meaning in the whole world. If we have such kind of renunciation towards this world through practice, it shows we have some realization on the preciousness of human life. Also generate great faith towards the Guru, who is truly inseparable from the Buddhas of the 3 times. It's not that we're especially happy when we see the Guru today. The Guru may wonder about your sudden kindness. Is it because of our past karma that he is so kind to me now? The disciple also thinks the Guru is especially good on one day, then after a few days abandons or slanders the Guru. Genuine faith is not like this. Always maintaining a strong faith in the Guru and never wavering. These are the 2 most crucial points in practice. This teaching was quoted in The Words of My Perfect Teacher, probably in the section on impermanence. We must apply the 3 excellences to the above principles. We must meditate on them repeatedly and put them into practice. Through such practical cultivation, we need to understand what is the sign of having conviction in rarity of freedoms and advantages. What is the sign that the preciousness of human life has arisen in our mind stream? That is, never wasting the time on oversleeping, not even for an hour. The standard for practicing the preciousness of human life is quite high. It should be like Geshe Chengawa, who never slept. Is Patrul Rinpoche's requirement a bit too high for us? Not everyone can do this. He might have different requirements for different levels of realization. The first and highest standard is Geshe Chengawa. If we can't reach his level, we should still be very diligent and not get lazy. We should take Geshe Chengawa as our role model. Seeing Geshe Chengawa, who was always up all night and only practicing virtuous Dharma wholeheartedly, his teacher Dromtonpa said to him with concern, "My disciple, you still need to relieve your body's fatigue. Otherwise, it will lead to imbalance of the 4 elements." Because he never sleeps, the teacher was very concerned. Maybe the teacher liked to sleep bit. Just joking. He was concerned about Chengawa's well-being. Geshe Chengawa replied, giving a teaching to his teacher, "Of course the body should recover. But when I think of how rare these freedoms and advantages are, I feel I have no time to rest." "You have time to rest, teacher, but I have no time to rest." The teacher said, "Oh, then I'll go to sleep." Just joking. We can't just make joke, otherwise we can't explain the profound meaning. Anyhow, that's why Geshe Chengawa never slept in his whole life. He instead recited the mantra of Akshobhya Buddha 900 million times in total. The mantra of Akshobhya Buddha is Om Dzam Dza Maharakana Hum Fat. Om Dzam Dza Maharakana Hum Fat. This mantra has great power and merit. Generally, all adverse conditions from devas, nagas, and yakshas can be pacified. It can cure various diseases and plagues in the world. Also, reciting it once can eliminate the 5 heinous crimes and all other negative karma. All the 4 activities, that is, pacifying, increasing, magnetizing, and subjugating activities, can be accomplished. Starting from today, everyone here will begin to reciting Akshobhya's mantra and not going to sleep at all now. Right? Reciting 900 million times in one's lifetime is truly admirable. His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche also said once before, he also had recited 900 million mantras in his lifetime. There are mantras of various different deities. Some have 1 syllable. Rinpoche said some have over 10 syllables. But even reciting a 1-syllable mantra 100 million times is very difficult. In the past, when we recited the syllable A, we all made aspirations to recite for 100 million times. Recently I've been reciting a mantra, but reciting 100,000 times a day is very strenuous. Sometimes chores get in the way, Only by getting up a bit earlier and sleeping a bit later can we find some time. Otherwise, for people like me with many mundane affairs during the day, practice is very difficult. I see many Dharma friends are similar. If you really want to practice well, you can't be too lazy. Indulging in sleeping is terrible, because without realizing it, an hour passes in an instant during sleep. You don't even notice it. As it says in The Way of the Bodhisattva, this vessel will be very hard to find later. The time that you have now, you fool, is not for sleep. Our current human life can be the ship that crossed the vast ocean of samsara. This vessel is very hard to obtain. So foolish people, don't sleep all day. Otherwise we will waste half of our life. As Sakya Pandita said before, people's short lives. Half is sleeping at night like death. Our life is already very short, but half of it is spent in a state of sleep. What a waste! We must practice virtuous deeds. To be like Geshe Chengawa, who never slept, might be a bit difficult for us. He never slept in his entire life. But before we generate such conviction in our mind stream, as Geshe Chengawa just said, when thinking of the preciousness of human life, how can there be time for sleep? Really, if we have a strong conviction in our hearts, it's not that easy to indulge in sleeping. If we don't have any heartfelt insight on this at all, we would sleep in lengthy times soundly. The worse one practices the preciousness of human life, the longer one sleeps. You can observe it by yourself. It's just like that. If you have something extremely important to do early morning tomorrow, it may be hard for you to sleep even if you want to. Tomorrow you are going to Beijing, Hong Kong, or America. If this matter is very important to you, then you probably can't sleep no matter what. So the fact is that it's mainly because one's own practice is particularly poor. As a result, many people are especially fond of sleeping. This must be resolved as soon as possible. Completely not sleeping may not be practical. As His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche said before, let us rest well, rest when we should rest. When I was younger, I didn't quite understand why he said that. I thought, such precious time at night. It's best to just sleep for only a little bit. I used to wonder about Phuntsok Rinpoche's teaching on this, but with age comes understanding. When it's time to sleep, one should sleep. We shouldn't go to extremes, neither completely depriving ourselves of sleep, nor spending all of our time sleeping. Look at many people today, living in a constant state of dullness. This is unacceptable. We must practice the Dharma with diligence. The chapter concludes with this verse. Though I have obtained these precious freedoms, I remain poor in their essence, the Dharma. Though I have entered the path of Dharma, I waste time on meaningless pursuits. Grant your blessings to me and all other deluded beings, so that we may realize the true essence of these freedoms and advantages. Although we have obtained a human life with freedoms and advantages, we lack in practice. We are quite deficient in truly integrating the Dharma into our hearts and constantly practicing. Although many people have long since entered the gate of Buddhism, some have even donned monastic robes and taken refuge vows, they are absorbed in non-dharmic activities and the 8 worldly concerns every day. Various non-dharmic behaviors arising from attachment, aversion, and ignorance. So Patrul Rinpoche humbly says, those foolish beings like me, may our mind streams definitely generate this realization of the preciousness of freedoms and advantages. We pray for the blessings of all Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, lineage gurus, and Dharma protectors. We should often recite this. We often recite like this. Actually, prayer is very important. You can see in A Guide to the Words of My Perfect Teacher, there is a specific liturgy with prayer and aspiration for these 4 contemplations. It is important. If you don't practice on them, just thinking about them is not enough. When you practice, you must put your palms together and recite what you should recite. With closed eyes before the Guru, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas, you must generate this realization of the preciousness of freedoms and advantages in your mind. a very strong wish, an inconceivable faith in the Guru, having a strong aspiration. If you start practicing in this state, your practice will be successful. Otherwise, if you just think about it in a very distracted state, with an indifferent attitude, you can't really gain genuine insight. So I also very much hope that all the Dharma friends listening here truly develop the realization of the preciousness of human life in your hearts. This is more important than anything else. If you have this foundation, then building further levels above it will be of no difficulty at all. If you haven't laid such a foundation well, the building above, no matter how splendid or well decorated, at a certain point will completely collapse. So laying a firm foundation is crucial for everyone. All right, we'll stop here for today.
Bandara